Welcome to the Weird Works podcast. I'm Dr. Christy, your host. Join us for conversations about alternative and sometimes controversial healthcare topics. This podcast will provide the evidence that you need in order to make informed decisions about your health, to empower you with the facts that you need to advocate for your health, and to encourage you that there is hope your body heals. Join us from experts from all things weird, as well as the testimonies of people with stories of radical healing who were once told that perhaps their condition was a death sentence, that they would just need to live with it, or that drugs and invasive surgery were the only answer. Let's get into agreement that if there is something natural and non-invasive that could be helpful, that it could be your first option rather than your last resort. Hey everybody, it's Dr. Christy here. You are watching or listening to the Weird Works podcast, and today I have the honor of Miss Sharlie Harvey with me here today. So I am going to let her tell you guys how we came to know each other, and then I'll tell you why I thought her story was Weird Works worthy. That was hard to say.
Weird Works worthy.
Yeah.
I got a pinched nerve in my neck, I guess 5 years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, and asked a friend for some chiropractic referrals, and she told me about a couple different chiropractors in town, and then she said, I think you would really like Christy Harvell because she does this weird nutrition thing, and I think you would benefit from it because I had major hormone imbalance after years of infertility treatment and needed to be put back together. So I started with her to put my neck back together, and then was venturing down the nutrition road to heal from hormone therapies and things like that.
This is true. And then where are you at now with us?
Now I work here. Now I am a nutrition response testing practitioner in the office as well. So come full circle. I laugh and tell patients all the time. I went home and after doing my exam, I was like, how in the world am I going to tell my husband what I just did, what I just paid for, and what I, putting some hope in, and now I do it for a living. And he's on program too, so.
She really has come full circle, and so has their whole family. Well, the reason why I wanted to share Sharlie's story with everybody is because I really do think that her journey through infertility and her persistence to have a family, I think really captures the spirit of why we have this podcast in the first place, to show people that there are incredible options out there and that there is hope. And her story really is one of persistence and determination. And so I think you're going to enjoy her story, and I hope that it encourages some of the listeners as well. So we talked about what originally brought you to Health by Design, and now how did the whole journey with infertility start? Because you started that journey before I met you, before you even had ever come in with me. So I don't even know if I know the full story, honestly.
Yeah. My husband and I met in high school and then dated through college and got married right out of college, and we were excited to start our family. We had a 3-year plan. We had our own plans. We were going to start having our family after we were married for 3 years, and it was going to be great. And so then we started trying, and 6 months went by, and then a year, and I had been charting, temperatures and ovulation and all the things that you start to do. And I noticed that my temperatures were weird and my ovulation was different. And so I started seeing an herbalist, and she was helping me with a few things. And then I diagnosed myself with Polycystic Ovarian syndrome, something I came across. And I fit the model minus the insulin resistance part of it. But then I went to a fertility doctor in town, Dr. Kevin Winslow at the firm, and he ran some tests, and we did some tests to find out that I have half of a uterus, so it's a unicornuate uterus. So
not a unicorn.
Not a unicorn, but close. And then also we had male infertility coupled with that. So we did egg retrievals and IVF and lots of hormone therapies and things like that, and did 8 embryo transfers into my body. And then every time we did that, we had to do a cervical dilatation where they stretch my cervix so that they were able to get in because it takes a turn. Just some anatomical things. And we lost all of those babies, and we'll get to see them in heaven someday.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I was at the end of that. I wanted to be put back together.
Yeah.
Because I had taken a lot of hormone drugs and treatments, and I was not physically myself anymore, even apart from like the emotional trauma of it. So,
what are some of the side effects, like physically, that you experienced from the hormones?
yeah, I have, like, my hair was falling out. I had cystic acne all over my neck, my body. I like was really depressed. My anxiety had gotten really bad, and just like moodiness, fatigue. Like I was very, very, very tired, and so I just felt really off. I didn't feel right anymore.
Right. So those are kind of similar things that we've heard from other women, whether they've gone through fertility treatments or not, or just struggle with their own, natural endogenous hormone imbalances, right? And what was the total length of that whole time of therapies and trying to get pregnant?
I think like 3 or 4 years or more. I know it was 8 years total where I kind of was like, I'm done, doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about any of your experiences going through the medical system? Is there anything that...
Yeah, I would say I absolutely love the firm and Dr. Winslow and what they do there. They're incredibly gifted and talented at what they do, but that's what they know how to do what they do. And so I was left, not intentionally, but I came out of that with not knowing how to put myself back together. And so I remember calling and asking, is there something natural I can do to get my skin back and to do, to feel better? And they were like, well, we can put you on metformin, which is, an insulin-related drug, and birth control pill, and like just a list of medications. And so that's they only had Band-Aids for me.
Right.
They didn't know how, they're not equipped to fix that part. So.
And that's kind of a recurrent theme, like with some of the other people that we've had on the show as well, is that they find that, there are times, obviously, that we need to incorporate traditional medicine. Oftentimes even people that are very adamant about doing natural medicine find themselves in the medical world, but they find that kind of they get spit out the other end and don't really have any kind of plan to put their body back together or for just restoring health in general. So we've kind of had other guests that have said the same thing. So this is kind of a heavy-hitting question, but did you ever give up on having a family?
I never gave up on having a family. I had to give up my plans. So being type A and being able to achieve whatever I wanted to if I put my mind to it was just my life history. And so I, was frustrated when I got to having children and I couldn't fix that. And it was really just a long process of God really, like literally peeling my fingers back on the story I had written for myself. I, remember thinking, okay, like he's taking my white picket fence down panel by panel and just setting it ablaze. Not to be hateful, but he had bigger plans for me than I had made for myself. He says like, I know the plans I have for you, not I know the plans you have for yourself.
Right.
I'm going to bless them, right. We make our own plans and then we just expect God to come in line and bless what we're doing. But really, I feel like my whole life story is God showing me that my plans are cute and he loves me, but that he has other plans for me. And really that this life isn't about me. We all think that everything we do and being here is about us. And I feel like my whole infertility story is God teaching me it's not about me, It wasn't about, he didn't create me to have a family. He created me to honor him and worship him. And my family looks different because that's the goal, is to honor him and to worship him. And so I didn't give up, but God had to do a lot of work in my husband's heart to get him to the story that he had for us, and had to peel back the fears and the things that he had towards adoption. it wasn't, he just had a hard time imagining that he could love a child that didn't come from him in the same way. He just couldn't. I think men have a hard time even with their biological children until they can talk and interact, they just have a hard time wrapping their brains around that. So God had to do lots of work in his heart. And, there's like stories along the way where we know that God changed my husband's heart. And then at just the right time that our son was ready to be our son in his story, God changed his heart. And, we were able to adopt and build the family the way that God had intended us to build our family. And then, I really did. I still always come back to it, like, well, what are you doing? And, what is our family going to look like? And that's me coming back to me and what I want. And so when I let go of that, then I'm not so much focusing on, like, giving up on our family and just waiting to see what God's going to do, and waiting is hard, So then we did foster care, and that was one of the hardest things I've ever done, not because of the child that we had in our home. He was incredible, but just working within such a broken system that needs so much help. That was really, really hard. And then continuing to walk out how God wanted to build our family. So I wouldn't say I gave up. It was just the long lesson of waiting on God.
Yeah. And is that where your strength comes from? Because what we realize is that when people finally do get through a healing journey, or, shedding all the expectation of what they thought was supposed to happen, that something internal had to happen, right? So is your faith really like where your strength comes from?
Yeah, absolutely. I really don't know how people go through hardship without trust in Jesus, and like, he is everything to me and sustains me. We have a newborn right now who, much to against my plans was to be off of work for 2 months and enjoy her. She has other plans, and has been colicky and screaming, and I've just been repeating the verse over to her from Psalms that God will sustain you. He strengthens the weak, and I think I absolutely don't know how I would have made it through the things that we've been through without my faith.
We talked on another interview about that spiritual component is so huge, and I think that's the part that, because you can't see it necessarily or always like put your finger on it or measure it, that people leave out. And I think that, obviously what we do in the practice is a lot of physical medicine, diet, nutrition, exercise, lifestyle, but that's that component that, like, we could be doing all the exact right things with somebody in their physical body, and they might not get a complete resolution because that spiritual aspect or emotional aspect is missing, right?
Yeah. And with, I was going to say on the faith piece, I feel like where my strength comes from too is that God has, my mother-in-law always says, like, he's built a resume of faith with me. God doesn't have to prove himself to us, but he's kind. The Bible says he's kind in all of his ways. And so even if it's painful, it's his kindness that he's building a resume with me of, like, I showed you I was faithful here, and then I could tell you incredible stories of God's faithfulness through Jaden's adoption story, and then through foster care, and then just our whole lives. He's built a resume of faith with me that, like, he's like, you can trust me, even when it hurts,
Yeah. And that conviction sometimes doesn't come until there's been experiences, right?
Yeah, until you've gone through.
Right. Yeah, I get it. But it's important for people who realize that maybe they're not yet on their spiritual journey, or they're very young, they're fresh to it, or maybe just curious about it, that it has to start somewhere, right? Like, you aren't born, well, some people might be, but not everybody's born with, like, a strong natural conviction like that. That they come from somewhere. So Sharlie has more of a story, because she just said she has an infant. So how did that all come about? How do you have an infant with what you just shared with us about? What's it? A unicornuate
uterus.
Unicornuate uterus, and failed attempts for fertility treatment.
Yes. And the part that I have, like, given up on is that, I've put my body through the ringer, and I've worked so hard to get healthy. And so going back to fertility treatments we have 4 embryos left from our IVF days, and we feel really convicted that they're life, and they are life the minute my husband's sperm and the egg met, and then they created these little blast embryos. They're 5 days old. They're boys or girls. They are who they are. And meeting our daughter, which I'll explain more, made them even more real because the rest of them are human just like her. And so we felt very convicted about the embryos we had. And after we came through the other side of foster care, my husband and I were like, oh my gosh, we're getting older. We're 36 now, and these embryos are just on ice. Like, what are we going to do? We don't want to give them away, and we don't want to thaw them, and just felt, really torn up about it. And of course, my husband's method of handling it was like, we'll just put our heads in the sand and we'll be 80 and then maybe they'll have a solution for us. And I'm like, that doesn't work. And I have a really close friend, Caroline, who, we would go on walks and talk about things we were wrestling with. And that was something that, I would talk about, that I just felt very trapped. And like, I physically cannot I'm so hurt by the process and all those things. Like, I can't bring myself to do it. And then I'm also really convicted about those embryos. And so her and her husband came to us and were like, hey, we really want to be surrogates for you. And we believe in the sanctity of life. And we believe, we're against abortion. So this is one way that we can faithfully step in and help honor these lives that God has created. And she reminds me that she wouldn't do it for just anyone, but that they really cared about us and they wanted to give us that gift. So we did surrogacy and have almost 6-week-old baby girl from one of our embryos.
I know, it's just a miraculous story. Like, it's like about God had to line everything up just the right way for it to be the right timing for you and her. And didn't you get a call from, like, I don't know what kind of storage facility where the eggs were? Didn't they kind of call you on your time?
Yeah, they were kind of like, hey, what are we doing here with these? And then Chris and Caroline were like, hey, if you want to do this, like, we want to move on with our family, so now's your time. So my husband and I had to get on the same page, and God had to work that out. And then the other part, like things like insurance, like we're like, we can't do this if we can't get insurance because it's just unbelievably expensive to pay for somebody out of pocket. And Caroline's insurance covered it, like things that God aligned to make it clear it's what we were supposed to do.
What did you learn about surrogacy? Because I know even like in the office and in conversation, they'd be like, wait, so who's going to do this part? And, like she's pregnant, it's your baby. Like what surprises or things that you didn't expect to learn about surrogacy that came up?
I really, I don't know, because I feel like I had a really unique experience because Caroline is just,
she's amazing.
I can't talk about her without crying.
I know. She's incredible.
The most incredible person you'll ever meet. And so she handled every step of the process with incredible grace towards me, or any of the emotions of it, or like if she, she was spotting one time and like how she handled me and the situation, or we had to rush the emergency room one time and she was just as cool as a cucumber and handled the nurses and the staff, during Corona where me and my husband weren't allowed to come in. That was probably the hardest part of surrogacy. Like somebody is pregnant with our child and Corona kept us from being able to go in with her and stuff like that. I don't know, because I feel like
it's not everybody's surrogacy journey, obviously. Yeah. But would you recommend surrogacy overall to other families?
I think it's definitely something God would have to call you to. I think it's something serious because it does involve, and that is the thing we struggle with the most, and it involves somebody else's life. So, pregnancy isn't, or birth is not risk-free, and it can be dangerous, and so you're putting someone else's life at risk. And so really without Chris and Caroline's strong conviction that was what God wanted them to do, like that would have been really hard. And it was incredibly hard to receive the gift, harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Well, I think their relationship is something that's definitely been unique. So we have Kingsley here.
Yeah.
Kingsley has been born. Do you want to tell everybody why the name Kingsley?
Sure.
It's a cool story.
Yeah, we'll change the tears.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do.
My husband's family grew up going to Kingsley Lake in Florida, and it's just a sweet place for all of us, and they went every summer, and I got to go along when we were dating, and then through marriage. It's one of the only places on earth that I can relax, and that I can turn my brain off, and I can check out and just really, truly enjoy and be at peace and talk to God. And so I spent a lot of time praying at Kingsley Lake for our family and our infertility story, and just crying out to God, being mad at God, and also, having him speak peace over me about what he was doing at that lake. And so that's why we named him.
I love it. And it's a K, so
Yeah.
I
like having a K baby.
Trying to prophesy that she'll be the next Dr. K.
Yeah.
We'll see. That's my plan, though, so we'll let her live out her own plan. Okay, so another chapter of this whole story is really another miraculous example of what the body is capable of that I didn't even know could happen. So,
Me either.
yeah, Sharlie had a surrogate, and yet she has been able to produce breast milk and breastfeed her own daughter. So how did you do that? How are you doing that?
I'll tell you the why first.
Yeah.
I felt through adoption, we had to do a lot of attachment therapy with our son, and not to his fault or anyone's fault, it just was his story. It's the fourth woman in his life, and so we had to do a lot to bond. And some of the things we did were breastfeeding related. Like, I was the only person allowed to give him sweet treats for a little bit because breast milk is sweet, like to try and get him to connect to me. And he was disappointed to learn the other day when it came back up 5 years later. He didn't realize we did these therapies. And he's like, "What sweet treats did you give me?" I'm like, "Grapes." He was like, "Grapes? That doesn't count." I was so disappointed. But so it was really important to me to bond with Kingsley because she was being born from another person's womb. And even when you have your own child and say the baby goes in the NICU, or like, there's lots of attachment issues that can happen even with your own biological children. So it was really important to me to be able to bond with her in that way. And like, even though breastfeeding is one of the most painful things I've ever done in my life, I loved that she knew who her mom was. She wasn't, sometimes you have to use formula in bottles, and she wasn't being passed around the room to whoever could feed her. Like, I had to figure it out, and I had to feed her. And so that's why, and also feel convicted about what's in formula, and it's really hard, and I'm still really struggling with it as we're figuring out reflux and all the different things. But I know it's a necessary thing that we have to use sometimes, but that I felt really strongly about giving her the most nutritious thing I could give her.
Right, and the antibodies that come from it and everything. Like, we know there's some formulas out there that are more natural based and more closely represent mother's true formula. But there's also a lot of synthetic ones that are out there that are soy based that are dangerous and will set a child up for allergies, chronic health issues, hormonal issues of their own down the road as well. So how did you get your breast to produce milk?
So there's the herbalist that I mentioned in the beginning of my story. She had told another family friend that, or her daughter anyway, that that she has known people who have been able to breastfeed their adopted children or whatever, and that she could help me do that. And so I went to see her, and one of the resources that she had was sheep's placenta from New Zealand.
I wonder why people say we're weird, right?
Yeah. So I started taking sheep's placenta to trick my body into thinking it's pregnant, but really it's just that God blessed it, because I really was on the sheep's placenta for like 45 days. It wasn't very long because of Corona. The supplement got stuck in shipping, and so I was on it way less than I wanted and had planned to be on it. And so I think it was just one of those things that God was like, okay, that's fine, but he was going to bless it anyway. And Eileen is an incredible herbalist, woman of faith, and she was like, if God wants it to happen, it's going to happen, and you just have to know that. And so then as soon as I stopped taking the sheep's placenta, I started taking herbs for making breast milk. And I started pumping every 2 to 3 hours for 3 months.
There's another story of persistence, right?
Yeah, thinking back on pictures, even when I was
Yeah.
getting like a drop, and my son would be like, "You're throwing that away," and I'm like, "I can't save a drop," but Jen to just keep going, like, okay, do I stop now? Do I stop now? Like, do I give up now? And I'm like, I'm just gonna keep going. I'm just gonna keep going, and I did. And so I pumped for 3 months, and then got to the point where I was making about 10 ounces a day.
It's amazing to me. I've seen some incredible stuff, but like I didn't even know it was possible.
No, like I know, like I didn't have a screaming baby. I didn't have all those other factors to deal with. I was toting coolers and machinery and things everywhere, and pumping in parking lots and car lines, and trying to make it work. But so I know it could be really hard if you have a baby and you're trying to do that too. But yeah, so now after lots of working on it, we are fully exclusively breastfeeding.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love it. I guess I just want to have you tell. We're gonna bring Kingsley out because we want you guys to see this little miraculous being. But what would you tell other people, whether it's fertility or adoption or just general health issues? Like, what would you share with people who maybe are struggling with, could they even be as persistent as you? Like, how do you dig down deep when everything's pointing towards give up, or this is too hard, or it's not sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, to give yourself grace, because even though I've shared all these, like, testimonies of faith and all the things that I've wrestled through, like, right now she's refluxy, and when the baby is screaming her head off, even knowing the things that I know, I'm like, I don't care, give her something, and I'm like, Lord, do I give up on my dad calls my hippie stuff, do I give up on that, or do I keep going? And so I really think you just have to follow your gut and have conviction. Like, I think because I know so much in my head about food and nutrition, it keeps me going to, like, pursue the best thing as much as I can, and then having grace for myself if I need to stop doing my hippie stuff.
Right. There's a time and place for both, right?
Yeah.
That's important too, because I think far too many people stress themselves out, and even people like our colleagues and ourselves for our own health oftentimes stress ourselves out when it can't always go according to plan, or like you find yourself suddenly having to rely on something more traditional in nature, even if it's just for like a short bit of time.
Yeah. But I will say that, like, I am so grateful that I have the tools that I have, and that I can, or what we say, like, don't guess, muscle test, that we can test her and not have to guess, like, what foods I should not be eating, and, what would help her stomach the best, or, in this scenario, I'm thankful that we have those tools and to just keep moving along.
So you already guessed it, because that's what I was going to say. So will Kingsley be raised this way? Like, what are we already doing? Want to tell them a little bit about what we were doing to troubleshoot some of the reflux?
Yeah, I'm just muscle testing foods and sensitivities that she has, and so that I'm avoiding through food, and then supplementing her digestive system with the things that are the exact right thing for her. So, like, I can know, hey, this supplement is really good for reflux, but is that the exact right thing for her? And so that's how we're using the muscle testing to figure out just the right thing that would make her tummy better.
And as she grows and develops, her nutritional needs will change. So how to follow it. Yeah. I think maybe overall that's a big message to people, is to persevere. Like, you might be told that there's not hope, or your condition can't be treated or handled, or you're out of options. But advocate for yourself and know that there's so many other holistic alternative things that are out there that are valid and that do work. And so maybe just, not take somebody's opinion at face value. That's the be all end all, Yep. Does anybody want to meet Kingsley? They're all saying yes. I see all the comments below. Yes.
Do you care if Denise still holds her?
No,
does it wake up?
No, it's fine. So go ahead.
So here she is.
This is Kingsley and her grandma Cindy. She's sleeping, so we didn't want to wake her up because, like Sharlie was sharing, she's had some rough nights and sleepless days.
So if she's sleeping, you don't wake her up.
That's the little miracle, baby. And how long have you been trying to bring Kingsley into this world?
over 11 years. She's been frozen for 11 years. She's older than her brother.
Yeah. She's gonna be wise. I know it when
Yeah.
she can talk wise beyond her years.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to share the sweet story with everybody to give encouragement and hope. And like I said, don't ever take no as I never take no as an answer. And this is a great example of, at once she was told that this could never come, and here's this miracle of life right here in their arms. So that's what we've got for you guys today. We'll put some links in the comments if you want to share maybe the herbalist that helped you.
Oh, sure.
And for some of the resources that we discussed today, so you guys can start researching some of that stuff if you are here in the Jacksonville area. And this is Dr. Christy Harvell signing off in Good Health Naturally.